Hello, trust you are all doing well. Happy New Year to you all. I hope you had a fabulous Christmas, and here we are. We thank God for giving us another new year. As you know, we are supposed to have an online classes, and we are continuing from where we left off before we wrote our mid-semester and went for a Christmas break. So we are looking at, we are still under section 1 with the topic Introduction and Importance of Studying Government. Kindly get all your study materials, your books, your pens, and every study materials that is needed for this section. Thank you. Hope you enjoy it. So with the strand, we are looking at government and development, and sub-strand is the concept of development. By the end of this lesson, students will be able to analyze the basic concepts and principles of government, including rule of law. So let's take this scenario. Imagine a country where the president can make any decision without consulting anyone, can change laws whenever they want or he wants, and can punish anyone who disagrees with it. Can you imagine such a country? If you find yourself in a country whereby the president can make decisions, take decisions without consulting anyone. The president can change laws whenever he wants and can punish anyone who disagrees with his decision. Just think about this. Would you want to live in such a country? Write your answer down in your book. Yes. So the question again is, would you like to live in such a country? I believe most of you wrote no. Why? Why not? Why wouldn't you want to live in such a country? I believe most of you will say that, if the president can take decisions without consulting anyone, then the president is a dictator. If the president can change laws whenever he wants, then the president is what? Autocratic. If the president can punish anyone who disagrees with his decisions, then the president is what? Heartless. The president is what? A tyranny. So no one will want to find him or herself, or you are boys, so no one will want to find himself in such a situation. Exactly. I wouldn't want to find myself in such a situation too. And all these things we've talked about will lead us to what we are going to look at today. And this is about rule of law. Okay? And when we talk of rule of law, it is the principles that protect citizens from abuse of power. So with the above scenario, when you look at it properly, you will realize that the president was abusing the power given to him. And because of that, most of us wouldn't want to live in such a country. So with the scenario given earlier on, we all agree that such a country under such a president has no rule of law. So what is rule of law? When we talk of rule of law, we say rule of law is the principle that the laws of a state apply equally to everyone, regardless of their position or status, and are enforced impartially. When we say something is impartially, it simply means it doesn't discriminate. It doesn't say that because you are rich, the law will be different, the law will be applied to you differently. Or because you are less educated, the law should be applied to you differently. Or because of your gender, the law should be applied to you differently. No, when we talk of rule of law, it is a situation or a principle whereby the laws of a state is applied equally to everyone, regardless of their position or status, and is enforced impartially. This means that no one, not even the president or head of state, is above the law. And this whole concept of rule of law was propounded or advocated by a man called A.V. Dicey. A.V. Dicey emphasized on three main principles. So we are going to look at the three main principles of rule of law. So A.V. Dicey stated that it is the law which rules a state, and he wrote it in his book, and the book title was entitled The Law of the Constitution, which he wrote it in 1885. Remember, he has stated that it is the law that rules the state. So what did he mean by that? To A.V. Dicey, in all things, people must apply the law and not any other means to administer or manage affairs. So according to A.V. Dicey, it is the law that rules the state. And for that matter, in all things, people must apply the law and not any other means to administer or manage affairs. A.V. Dicey brought in three principles of rule of law. And these three principles of rule of law is what is stated here. We have the principle of certainty or legality of the law or supremacy of the law. Then we have equality before the law, and then the third principle means the principle of liberty or respect for fundamental human rights. So let's take the very first one, which talks about the principle of certainty or the principle of what? Legality, or the principle, the supremacy of the law. When we talk about this principle, what exactly is this principle trying to say? So when we talk of the principle of certainty or legality of the law, it simply means that rule of law, when we talk of rule of law, the law must be in existence, known and passed by an elective legislative body of the people. So the law must be in existence, and this law which is in existence must be known and passed by an elective legislative body of the people. Again, the legality of the law implies that no person can be made to suffer either in body or goods except he is found guilty of breaking or breaching an existing law. And this can only be determined in the ordinary courts of the land. So when you come to Ghana, you will realize that we have an existing legislative body, which is our legislature, that is our parliament. And also, per our laws, so they make the laws, and per our laws, nobody can be made to suffer unless the person has been found guilty, and this guilty should be determined by what? A competent court of law. So when it happens like that, it means there is principle of certainty. So the law, the court will determine who is guilty or who is not guilty. An ordinary person like me and you cannot pass judgment on a person and make the person suffer if not for the courts. I hope we all understand. Good. Now we go to equality before the law. I think this one is so straightforward. When we talk of equality of the law, this principle means that nobody is above the law of the land. And that same law should be applied equally to all manner of persons, irrespective of their status, their rank, or their wealth. So everybody is equal before the law. The law that will be used to the law that will be applied on Mr. A should be used to apply to Mr. B if he is also found to have gone against or done something similar to what Mr. A did. So you can't get up and say that, oh, as for Mr. A, because he's also and so, we can't use this law on him, but the law can be used on Mr. B because he's not so and so. When we come to principles of rule of law, we are all supposed to be what? Equal before the law. It doesn't matter whether you are the richest man or you are the poorest man, you are the well-educated or you are less educated, you are the president, you are an ordinary citizen. The law is supposed to be applied equally. I hope you understand me. Now we move to the third principle, which is principle of liberty or respect for fundamental human rights. What does it say? With this principle, what it means is that it implies that people must enjoy basic rights such as fundamental human rights and liberties. And we all know, when we talk of fundamental rights and liberties, I believe we all know. When I tell you to write it down, you'll be able to write so many fundamental human rights. What are they? Yes, so we have the right to what? To life, right to privacy, freedom of speech, freedom of movement, and so on and so forth. So when we talk of the principle of liberty or respect for fundamental human rights, that is what we mean. That means that this particular principle should be applied to everybody. So we should all enjoy the same rights. I hope you understand me. Good. Okay, so we have looked at A.V. Dicey's definition for rule of law, as well as the three principles he has stated. Now, as years went by, okay, a group of jurists, okay, and I believe we all know what a jurist is. If you don't know what a jurist is, kindly take your dictionary, write this word down, J-U-R-I-S-T, write it down and go through a dictionary and look for the meaning of a jurist, or use your tablet or your laptop or your phone and search for the meaning of a jurist. So as time went on, after the Second World War, and the Second World War ended in 1945. So after the Second World War, an attempt was made to redefine the concept of rule of law. So a group of jurists, known as the International Commission of Jurists, in 1959 met in a town in India called New Delhi. So it was an international conference, and through that they redefined what rule of law is. What we must bear in mind is that they did not change the definition of rule of law. I say they did not do what? Change the definition of rule of law. All that they did was that they added something to rule of law. So the original meaning of rule of law with its principle, they still maintain it because it was good. They all agreed that what A.V. Dicey said or defined, how he defined rule of law and how he spoke about rule of law was perfect. But all that they needed was to add something little to rule of law. So with the three principles, they also brought in something. And what did they bring in? They redefined rule of law and made it imperative for states, countries, to provide social and economic amenities, which would make individuals develop their talents. So for them, they said that all this supremacy of the law, equality before the law, the fundamental human rights that A.V. Dicey spoke about is perfect. But they think that aside the three, every state should also ensure that they provide social and economic economic amenities for their people, for their population, to make sure that the individual lives a better life, and through that able to develop their talents. So the next one we are going to look at is why rule of law must be enforced. Why should we enforce rule of law? So far, I believe we all agree that rule of law is a very beautiful concept. It's a good concept. So why must we enforce it? 1. Protection against arbitrary or tyrannical rule. That is rule of law serves as a check on the abuse of powers by our leaders. So we must enforce the rule of law so as to prevent our leaders from abusing the powers we've given to them. Secondly, we must enforce rule of law to protect the individual right and freedom. And thirdly, we must enforce rule of law to help to improve the living standard of the people. Remember the New Delhi's definition they added that the states should provide economic and socio-economic amenities. And when we talk of socio-economic amenities, I believe we all know what it is. So it is for state to do what? To provide these socio-economic activities to help improve the living standard of the people. 4. Rule of law must be ensured in order to promote equality before the law. That is, everyone is treated equally before the law, irrespective of the person's position. So when we enforce rule of law, when we make sure rule of law is enforced, then at the end of the day, we will all be equal before the law. Then the last reason why we must enforce rule of law is facilitate good governance. That is, where rule of law prevails, dictatorship is minimized. Do you all remember the scenario I gave? When we started, the scenario I gave, that you have a president, you live in a country whereby the president can take decisions, can make laws, can arrest anybody who disagrees with him. Would you want to live in such a country? And I believe most of us said, no way, we don't want to be there. Yes. So you see, when there is rule of law, it facilitates good governance. It minimizes dictatorship. I hope you all understand me. So we are going to look at factors that limit the operation of rule of law. And the first factor is high rate of illiteracy. You see, there's very high rate of illiteracy among people, especially Africans. And this makes it difficult for most people living in Africa and Sub-Sahara, to know their rights and liberties and where to seek redress when these rights are violated. So there are a lot of people day in and day out, their rights are violated or their rights are being violated, but they don't even know that their rights are being violated, and for that matter they should seek redress. And even people who know, most often do not even know where to go to, where to go to. Then the second one is diplomatic immunity. When we talk of a diplomat is a foreigner or someone who works in a foreign country in the name of his government. So if a Ghanaian is taken to another country, let's take it that Canada, to go and work in the name of Ghana government, that person is considered as what? A diplomat. So when we talk of diplomat, and immunity is something that protects you. When we talk of immunity, something that protects you. So when we talk of diplomatic immunity, when a foreigner, when someone is in a foreign land working in the name of his government, there's a protection called diplomatic immunity. And such people, those laws of that land doesn't affect them. So let me give you an example. For instance, we all know Ghana as we stand, as at now, frowns upon, or in our laws, it's against, it is criminal for one to be what? A homosexual. Meanwhile, in other countries, homosexuality is accepted. So if a person moves from a country that has legalized homosexuality to Ghana and get involved in that act and is arrested, or maybe, yes, he's arrested or she's arrested, because that person is a diplomat, because the person is here in the name of the government of his country, we cannot use our laws which criminalize homosexuality against him. If anything, then the person would be what? Would be sent back to his home country for action to be taken. But in that case, when the person gets back to his home country, homosexuality probably is legalized there. So it doesn't make it criminal. So that's one thing. Remember, we said when we talk of rule of law, we mean nobody's above the law. But we have people who have diplomatic immunity, whereby the laws of your land doesn't apply to them. So in that case, it means they are above the law, isn't it? Yes. So when we talk of diplomatic immunity, foreign diplomats enjoy immunity no matter the crime they commit. No matter the crime committed, he or she cannot be tried in the country in which they find themselves. And I've used the homosexual as an example. So diplomatic immunity is one factor that limits the operation of rule of law. So another factor that limits the operation of rule of law is system of government. When we talk of systems of government, we are referring to the type of governmental system a country uses or operates. Examples of some of these governmental systems are military rule, one-party system, autocratic system, and what have you. So when a country, the type of governmental system a country practices can equally limit the realization of rule of law. Because if you are operating a military type of system, there's nothing like rule of law. If it is a one-party system, the same thing. when a country is operating an autocratic system, of course, there's nothing like rule of law. So it limits the operation of rule of law. Then the last but not the least is age limitation. You see, children less than 7 years cannot be prosecuted, notwithstanding the legal offense committed by them. So we say nobody is above the law. The law should be applied equally. But if a child less than 7 years picks their father's gun and is playing with it and mistakenly pull the trigger because he thinks it's a toy gun and it goes off and kills someone, he's less than 7 years. The law says that no matter the severity of the crime, you can't do what? You can't prosecute that child. So does it mean that nobody is above the law? No. A child less than 7 years, can we say he's above the law? Anyway, so age limitation is also one of the factors that limit the operation of law. So we are also going to look at ways in which rule of law is realized in Ghana. Okay, we all agree, or if you don't know, then I want you to know that Ghana is one country in Africa, sub-Saharan, that practice rule of law. And how is rule of law realized in this country? 1. Citizens are encouraged to know their rights, responsibilities, and the laws of Ghana through institutions like the National Commission for Civic Education, NCCE, and the Commission for Human Rights and Administrative Justice, SHRAJ. So these are institutions that educate, that encourages citizens of Ghana to know their rights, their responsibilities, and so on and so forth. Okay, and also an avenue through which you can seek for justice when you think these rights have been trampled upon. Then secondly, Ghana's judiciary is independent, which ensures that the courts interpret laws without interference from other organs of government. So we have what we call independence of the judiciary in Ghana. And for that matter, the courts interpret laws without interference from either the executive or the judiciary. Then the third one is what? There exists an independent media or press freedom, which allows the press to play its watchdog role well. So when you look around this country, we have countless number of media houses. We have countless number of them. And these media houses have been given the freedom to operate. And in doing so, they put the government on its toes because they serve as a watchdog. The third ways in which rule of law is realized in Ghana is what? The three organs of government, namely the judiciary, the legislature, and the executive, are made to work independently of each other. And this is to prevent what? Arbitrary rule. Then the last one for ways in which rule of law is realized in Ghana is what? Provision of basic education. So provision of basic education such as what? The free compulsory universal basic education, FQ, free SHS as you are enjoying, and also healthcare. So we have the National Health Insurance Authority and all that. And all these provision of basic education, healthcare, and what have you is done without what? Discrimination. Okay. So because of that, everybody can have access to education, everybody is supposed to have access to healthcare, and so on and so forth. And in so doing, it helps in the realization of rule of law in this country. Phew. Okay, so there's an assignment for you guys. Take your books and write this down. Yes, take your books, your pens, and write this down. Exploit the internet and other related materials for information on challenges of the rule of law. Exploit the internet and other related materials for information on challenges of the rule of law. I hope we've all gotten that. Good. Then the next one is suggest 5 ways to address them. So when you exploit the internet and other related material for information on challenges of the rule of law, then you suggest 5 ways to address them. Write them down in your exercise books. Okay? Write this ways, this suggestion in your exercise book. All too soon, we've come to the end of today's lesson. Thank you so much for availing yourself for us to have this interesting interaction. I hope to see you next week. Take care and be good. Bye-bye.